If you didn't know what guide running was before this video, then by the end of the video you will know what guide running is. Welcome back to my YouTube channel, guys. Can't believe it's nearly the end of April. We're all dealing with lockdown and COVID. So I decided to myself, while we're all at home more, I decided that I'd make a YouTube video all about guide running. Now, what makes me experienced to talk about guide running is, well, I've done a lot of races. I've started from the very beginning, from a 10k up to World Championship level. As you all know, I'm visually impaired. My eyes normally look small, but today they look extra small because they look extra small when they're tired, when they're dry, when they're irritable, and that's what they are today. So today my eyes are really frustrating, and it can be difficult having a disability. There is days that are ups and there is days that are down. And today is kind of one of those days because my eyes are just frustrating me. So some of you might be saying, oh, her eyes look extremely small in the video, and that's the way my eyes are. So I can't do anything about it. I can't change it. I have to live with it, and I just have to get on with it. So enough about me and my eyes being small and them being extra small today and them being dry. Let's get into what I wanted to talk to you about today on this video, which is guide running. So you might be thinking, what is a guide runner? A guide runner is a volunteer who aids a visually impaired runner to do running or jogging. There's different techniques for guiding. So you can use waist to waist tether, where a tether would be tied to your waist and your guide runner's waist. You can have a rope tether, which is both you and your guide runner hold the rope both in your hands. Another way is verbal cues. Over the years that I've been running, the three main guides who have helped me are Louis, Philip and John. The three of them have been absolutely instrumental to me in achieving my goals, and I'm so thankful for them. Here is a picture of me, John, Louis and Philip at a race that I did in Tooting-Bec in London. That was in September 2018. That race, I went there with the intention to complete a distance of 200 kilometers. 12 hours into the race, I got hypothermia and I had to pull out of the race. So you will experience ups and downs, and my guide runners that night, Louis, John and Philip, they really comforted me. They helped me to bounce back and be resilient. And so it's not just about the running. You form friendships with guides as the period goes on. When you're competing, International Paralympics have a standard for visually impaired athletes. So T11 would be that you are totally blind and that you have to run with a guide runner. T12 is where you have a small bit of sight and running with a guide runner is optional. And T13 is you have sight, but your sight is deemed not bad enough to need a guide runner. So anybody classified as T13 can't use a guide runner. I have been classified by Paralympics Ireland as T12, so that allows me the option to run with or without a guide runner. All of my races, whether it's recreational races, a fun run in a park, or whether it's training or whether it's competing at international level, all of my races have been with a guide runner. Now, throughout my years of running, I have had different difficulties regarding guide runners and regarding different races. Some races not wanting my guide runner in the race, some races believing that guide runners are pacers. Let's get this clear from now. Guide runners are not pacers. International Paralympics have deemed that. Guide runners aren't pacers. Being a guide runner can be one of the most challenging and gratifying things that you do. If you're running with a visually impaired runner for the first time and you feel nervous, that's okay. I would expect you as a guide runner to feel nervous. The main thing is communication. That's so important, and for your guide runner to be observant of the surroundings and of obstacles, and for your guide runner to go out and maybe do a practice run with a blindfold on. My guide runners have done this and they have found it very beneficial, because they felt then that when they were communicating to me as about obstacles, that it made that easier to communicate because they were more aware of it. Your runs with the guide runner will be a lot of learning runs in terms of what works best for each of you in terms of verbal cues, and like when I'm on unstable ground with my guide runner, I would automatically catch their wrist or their forearm, and their forearm would be quite solid. So I would, if we're going up and down, say footpaths or up and down steps, I would catch the forearm, which would be quite solid, grab onto that, and that would prevent me from falling. When you're approaching a ramp or any obstacle, you can do the counting down method: 3, 2, 1, ramp, 3, 2, 1, obstacle. So that's a kind of universally accepted verbal cue. Out in your training runs, because a visually impaired runner can't see their surrounding, it would be nice sometimes, depending on whether you're trying to do a hard session or whether you're taking it easy, for the guide runner to explain to the visually impaired person the surroundings, such as you're running in a park and there's a water fountain on the left, there's swans on the right. For me, some training runs can become more interesting if the guide talks about what's in the surrounding area. Just remember, a visually impaired runner isn't expecting you to give every single detail of the run, because obviously that will be very mentally draining for you if you feel as a guide runner that you have to explain every single thing. But just pick out key points on the run. Don't run too fast with the visually impaired runner. Keep a steady pace, and remember, it's the visually impaired runner's job to set the pace, not your job as a guide runner. Call out potential hazards to the visually impaired runner, such as potholes, puddles, dogs. Dog leads is important to call out. Kids, slippery paths. Another tip for a guide runner is be patient with a visually impaired runner when you're running for the first time, because obviously you're getting to know one another. There might be a lot of sound around, the visually impaired runner might not hear you, so be patient on the first run. As a guide runner, be assertive in risky and hazardous situations, such as you may need to yank the visually impaired person to the side. My guide runners have done this a lot with me. For example, if somebody was running up beside us really fast, and or even a bicycle coming towards us too fast, you may need to just yank the visually impaired person out of the way. So you need, as a guide runner, to be assertive about that. Guide running is not for everybody, so if you're doing it and you feel that just half-hearted about it, then, and you deep down don't actually really want to do it, then don't feel obliged to do it. Have an open and honest conversation with the visually impaired runner. There's no point doing it if you're not enjoying it. If you've any questions, comments about guide running, definitely feel free to put the questions below and I'll answer them. I'll get maybe my guide runners to answer them. As a visually impaired runner, if what the guide runner is doing isn't working for you, then be open, be honest, but don't just criticize. Offer suggestions or tell the guide runner, oh look, it would work better for me if you did it XYZ way. So be open and honest if you feel the guide runner is doing something wrong. You should talk with that guide runner about what your expectations are, what you expect from the guide runner, what the guide runner expects from you, what pace you want to run at, what distance you want to run. Just be very clear. That's where all the communication comes in.
Today I've come up from Cork. I like training in the Phoenix Park because it's relatively safe. However, there is hidden hazards such as dog walkers with extended leads, broken footpaths, speed ramps, grass roots coming through the footpath. I suppose these are all things that people take for granted. I don't have a perception of depth, so I suppose some things like people take for granted, as in stepping down, I might think that's flat, whereas people would see the step.
I just want to say to any visually impaired runner out there who's considering taking up running, to do it. For me, running has really built up my confidence. There's been a lot of ups and there's been a lot of downs. One thing I would say is that back a few years ago, when I was only starting out in running, I did find it very hard to find running guides. However, the more I became known, the more people who wanted to run with me. Therefore, I had to wonder and ask myself, what is their purpose as to why they want to run with me? Is it because they genuinely want to run with me, or is it because I've become more known in running circles? When I started off running and when I was trying to do my first 10k, which was back in 2012, I found it extremely difficult to get a running guide. I eventually did get a running guide. Again, another situation happened in 2014 when I was to run my first marathon in October 2014. I put an ad out in my local paper. I put an ad out in my local running clubs. I put an ad in my local radio station. Nobody came forward. Nobody wanted to be my running guide, and for me that was very disheartening because there is so many running clubs out there. So what did I give up? No, I didn't, because you have to keep going. You have to keep trying. If it's something that you believe in. For me at that time, I was doing my first marathon for a charity and I really wanted to do the marathon because I had committed to it. So I needed to find a running guide. I put out a tweet on Twitter at the time saying, no running guide, blind visually impaired girl won't be able to do the marathon. And a person came forward and it snowballed then, and then I did eventually find a guide runner. So I suppose watching this video, I just want you to realise that it hasn't always been easy for me, and that it has been a stepping stone from doing recreational running, doing it for 10k, a charity, to stepping stoning up to a bigger level, where last October I was at the World Championships in France. Those two guide runners there were absolutely excellent, Ed and Gillian. I only met them at the airport, but my guide runner John picked them out based on their personality, because being a guide runner is a lot based on personality, and that's the advice that I'd give to any person thinking of becoming a guide runner. You might think that it's a very complicated thing, but it's not complicated. It can be challenging, but it also can be gratifying. It's about working with the visually impaired runner. It's about listening to what they feel they need, and also the visually impaired runner listening to the guide runner. As I've said already in this video, it is about teamwork. Hope you liked this video today, guys, and that you found it informative. If so, give it a thumbs up. Also, put a comment below any questions about guide running. I'd really be happy to answer, because I really want to get more people out running who are visually impaired, and more people out there who are fully sighted, getting them guiding visually impaired runners. Thanks guys, until my next video, chat to you again.